Welcome to the My Curious Colleague podcast with your host, me, Denise Vinieri. We'll be talking all things consumer relations with a focus on consumer product goods organizations and the brand specialist and analyst roles and responsibilities. So, if you like CPGs like I like CPGs, marketing, insights, and caring deeply for your consumers, well, take a listen. In this episode, I talk with my colleague, Kyle Spittler. Kyle has been a leader within the consumer engagement space for the past 10 years and most recently at Church Dwight as manager of consumer relations North America. Prior to that, his experience included time as a customer success manager at Astute, as well as time at another CPG organization, Kimberly-Clark. In addition, Kyle is an active member of SOCAP, the Society of Consumer Affairs Professionals, and has served on the board of the Ohio chapter. Hi, Kyle. So happy to have you on the podcast today.
Hey, Denise. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
There's so much to talk about here with you, especially your career experience that interests me. You are someone that's been on the client side in systems analysis, then you spent some time on the vendor side, and now you're back on the proverbial client side, leading the whole kit and caboodle. In that time, we're looking at two CPGs organizations, so you're really entrenched in that industry. And then also, you started out as someone on, I believe, on the phones, and now you're leading this organization. So was hoping you could just chat a little bit about that journey and maybe some of the decisions that have led you here.
Sure thing. Yeah. And apologies. I know this this COVID environment has us working from home and getting accustomed to being in part of each other's personal lives. You just heard my dryer buzz there. So sorry about that.
Do you wanna take a break and get that
No,
done,
that's
or?
okay. um, but
Okay.
it's been, like you said, it's been an interesting journey. Started 10 years ago. Oh gosh, almost over 10 years ago now, as a phone rep at Kimberly Clark, fielding calls about any number of things you can possibly imagine. Moved up there into a social media role when we were sort of transitioning digital community management in-house from some various agencies. And that experience really got me a chance to do a lot in the way of systems implementation and analytics work. And sort of just was a perfect segue to a third position at KC as systems implementation specialist. And then did that for a little while and had an opportunity come up to go support a big program over at Alta Resources as a business analyst. So I spent a few years at Alta and had another opportunity come up to go work for Wilkie Global down in Columbus. And that was just a fantastic experience, an opportunity to work with so many great customers in building out their customer care, strategies and programs. So it was just a awesome experience. And then, of course, as you mentioned, most recently now at Church and Dwight, doing the management of the North American team.
Yeah, and congratulations to you, Kyle. I know that's you just had just a little over a year under your belt, and that's fantastic. And it really speaks to the career pathing in this industry, consumer engagement, that's available and out there. Because I think with each one of those roles, it sounds like you moved along, you were on the cutting edge. Systems is so important, social media is so important. You were really able to get exposed to a lot of these aspects of the business, which I think just continues to help you learn and grow. And especially what I like about your background is, a lot of it is really the foundation of it is analysis, whether it was, looking at call volume trends or looking at brand trends. So I think you're really really a role model to me, and to others in the industry, who are looking to understand those career paths. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I was just wondering, like when you were a the call service rep at Kimberly Clark, were you thinking, "Oh, this is cool. Maybe I'll run my own, team someday as, the manager of the consumer relations?"
I really had no
I think I know the answer, but
yeah,
just want to hear your
I had no idea.
good.
I had no idea that this was even a possibility for me. At the time, I just needed a job. I was coming out of college and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I studied communication in college and I wasn't very studious. So it was kind of like, well, shoot, I really need to figure out what I want to do. And then in doing that job, I really got a passion for it. Like I've always sort of been the kind of person who enjoys making sure everyone has a good time and everyone has a good experience. And it was sort of just this natural fit, it seemed like. So I feel definitely blessed that I had that initial opportunity. I mean, I know that is such a tough job. I had my days where I was like, I can't take another call, but then you kind of have those other days when you get a letter in the mail from some consumer with their, baby's picture in it saying how much they appreciated your service and they'll continue to be a customer because of it. And then those days, kind of make up for the tough ones.
Right, right. Aw, love that. Well, we'll switch a little to some questions. Really, I want to try to just get everybody level set on your background, on some of the organizations you've been involved with, and maybe some of the technologies that you've been exposed to. So I'll ask a bunch of questions here. Looking back, what are some of the functions that I'll call it consumer relations, consumer care teams reported up through?
Oh gosh, it's such a mixed bag.
I
I think in my first
sure do.
yeah, in my first days it was very quality driven, and almost every organization I worked with reported up through quality. Over the years, I think more and more have sort of started to branch out and report up through like innovation teams or centers of excellence for customer experience or marketing. I've seen some, oddly enough, that report up through like logistics, which is a strange one to me. But no matter where you are, I think positioned in the organization, your obligation is to support the entire organization. And that's the thing. Like it doesn't really matter where we report up to. Ultimately, we end up supporting legal, finance, R&D, quality, marketing. You name it.
Got it. It's true though. I mean, if you want to learn, or another pitch for the industry, if you want to learn about, how a business works, this is such a
Absolutely.
great place to be, because you are touching all those stakeholders, and you're dangerous because you know a little bit about each one as they relate to the consumer. All right. How about this, the size or the volume of contacts, and some of your experiences that you supported? Do you have a range or?
Yeah, again, it's been interesting. You deal with some of the agricultural companies out on the West Coast who maybe get 10,000 calls in a year, or you could deal with some of the Fortune 500 companies that get 10,000 calls in a day. So it's been quite a big range, and it's been cool, really, to go around and have a chance to learn about how each of those different size organizations works. You find that in a smaller organization, you've got one person who's the manager doing the work of 10 people at a bigger company. The workload doesn't change. You just have less people to do it. So yeah, it's a mixed bag for sure.
Yeah, and I can imagine when you're working with clients or companies that have different contract volumes, there's a variety of ways that they're going to capture that data. So, what are some of the CRM tools, or was it sometimes captured just in an Excel spreadsheet?
Sure.
If you could share some
Yeah,
of those.
I've seen the Excel spreadsheets and the Microsoft Access databases, and and
Okay.
some pretty robust and sophisticated things. Like Astute is doing in Salesforce, Zendesk. I've not personally worked with the latter of the two, but aside from a few Salesforce products, some of their social media
Mhm.
things. But yeah, there's a wide variety out there, and it's an interesting mix too sometimes.
How about the mix of things you've seen on the as far as reporting tools go, or folks taking it out of their
Sure.
CRM, the
Yeah,
reporting?
there again, I mean, it depends how sort of advanced your reporting technology is and your budget allows. But there's some pretty sophisticated tools out there like Tableau and Power BI. My The majority of my experience was with Wilkie's Insight tool, now Astute's Insight tool, which is a really good BI dashboarding tool. But everyone starts somewhere. I mean, my start was learning from a guy by the name of Dave Peschel in Excel, and just putting together some CSV
Shout
outputs
out.
and pivot tables from Excel. Oh yeah,
Shout out to Dave, someone we both know, although you've worked with him directly quite a while.
yeah,
Great guy. Now, the social media technologies that you've seen in your experience, can you share any of
yeah.
those?
So the very first, I guess second job that I had at KC. I looked at a lot of tools back then, just out of interest, and ultimately implemented the Wilkie Smart tool, which is very straightforward in just consumer engagement. That was the laser focus of that tool. There were some others that I've used over the years. Back in the day, it was called Radian 6, but Salesforce has morphed that into, I think they call Social Studio nowadays, and it's just grown. But those are kind of the primary two that I've worked with over the years. Loved them both.
Got it. Got it. Well, anything to help manage that deluge of comments that, we've seen
You
come
bet.
through that channel.
Made an interesting comment there, like the about the smattering of data, and I think it's worth exploring. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's crazy to me how many different tools you need to actually manage all of these different channels. When you're talking about ratings and reviews, web or text chats, inbound social media from like Facebook or Instagram or whatever. It's just astonishing that there's not one single solution for everything. But you know, yeah, a
I
great
hear
point,
you.
and maybe some technology folks out there will perk their ears up, and there's an opportunity there.
Somebody, yeah, somebody,
Yeah,
I'm sure is working on that. Let's just say, I hope they are.
yeah.
I hope they are. So, getting back to you and data, um, you've been hands-on. I'm sure you've got folks that have worked for you as well, analyzing the data. So, thinking about any aspects of your experience with data, can you talk about something, maybe at a high level, an analysis that really was able to help move the business forward?
Oh, that's a good one. There's been a lot of times, but I found the most effective ways when you're telling stories, when you're actually, you know, voicing the consumer's experience rather than just showing a chart. And so some of the most powerful, experiences that I've had in actually having data resonate with folks is when you actually take some snippets of call recordings and include it when you're presenting a deck or when you're walking through charts, so you can actually hear right from the consumer's mouth the problem that's being pointed out on the chart, and that tends to be where I've seen the most success in moving people, but yeah, there's been a ton of different experiences where that's been effective.
Cool. Are you somebody who, have kind of gotten into the whole statistical analysis with data, or not so much?
Sure. Yeah. It sort of it depends on your audience. A lot of times you run into um, people who just don't really understand what the significance is, but other times you have scientists or statisticians you're working with that want to see it a specific way. So using things like IMR charts, even doing some sort of comparison analysis. Based on population sizes and things. So yeah, I mean, to an extent, but it's not often that you're asked for that. I think most times it's more like normalized complaint
Right.
ratios with volume units. Um, whether it's units sold or units produced or units shipped, everyone has a different metric. But yeah, very seldom have I been asked for statistical analysis, short of some Six Sigma projects or things like that. But yeah, there has been a little bit of that in there too.
Got it. I mean, it does go back to what is the business question your audience is asking and what's the
You
appropriate
betcha.
tools. So you mentioned, I think you said IMR analysis, and I'm not sure what
That's
that is. Can you
it's like
share top line? What's that even stand
it
for?
stands for individual points and moving range. So you're basically looking at an individual data point in comparison with its range over a period of time. And there's control limits that are set, based on whatever threshold you want. Usually, the standard is one standard deviation, but or at least that's what I've seen people ask for. But it's a way of setting a threshold and monitoring against the threshold rather than just looking at like absolute complaints or even a complaint ratio comparison to a past
Yeah.
range of data points.
I know the concept, but I just never heard it called IMR. So thank you for that for that explanation. Appreciate it.
You bet.
So you strike me, Kyle, as someone who really likes to connect the dots. So whether that's connecting people or connecting data points so they tell a story. Is that something that you've always found easy to do? Is that something you worked at? Help me understand you a little bit more so that if there's someone who wants to build those skills, they might have some takeaways.
I think it starts from coming from a place of wanting to be helpful, and I think when you're young, when you're a kid, you wanna know the answer to everything, right? Like you want to have the answer to everything, and as you get older, hopefully you realize you're never going to have the answer to everything, but you could know who does have the answer, and so if someone, whether it's a client or a coworker or whomever, comes to you looking for some information. I may not know the answer, but I know someone who's really good at that, and I could put you in touch. And so that's kind of been, you know, what I've tried to do, is be helpful, and I think that applies to, like you mentioned, data too. If you notice something is odd as you're evaluating data, and you don't have an audience that might be interested in learning that in your monthly report outs or whatever, you reach out to them and you say, hey, I noticed this, you might be interested to see, and just sort of, hey, you should talk to R&D about this consumer feedback about a new product idea that we keep hearing, or those kinds of things. If there's not already a relationship established, and you have an opportunity to connect those dots, then I think overall you could be more productive as an organization, you know?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is you kind of, this all starts from a good place, a place of you wanting to be helpful. And I think that's a great place to start. And data is a nice icebreaker when you're trying to, build a relationship with somebody in the organization that maybe you haven't worked with before. So I think there's some great tips for folks. So now I'm wondering if you might have a volunteer group that you'd like to give a shout out to. Maybe it's a group that you volunteered with before, or one that, perhaps you're supporting in other ways.
Sure. So I don't know. I guess this past year, I've noticed a lot of my friends that are musicians and in the service industry and things out of work. And so I think one thing I would give a shout out for is be mindful of that. As things are starting to open up, and if you can, don't be shy about buying a musician's CD if you see them playing a show, or a T-shirt. And don't be shy about over tipping a little bit for those folks who have gone through a pretty stressful year. But where I've tried to make a difference, at least recently, is there's an organization in Columbus, Ohio, called the Kirk Horn Music Fund. And this organization is focused on providing music education for kids all over the world, whether it's virtually or with in-person lessons. And I know for me, being lower class kid growing up in a small town in Iowa, music was certainly a key to exploring creativity and being able to pursue this career. And so I think if we can give kids an opportunity to do that, it might help them, out of circumstances that they can't help. And so I've been trying to work with that group a little bit this past year, and they're a great group of folks.
That's a great shout out.
You can read all about it at kirkhornmusicfund.com. Yep.
Well, thank you, Kyle. You've been most gracious with your time with me, and I appreciate you hanging out on the podcast
I sure
today.
appreciate you having me, Denise, and I got to tell you, I feel honored. The guests you've had on already are very esteemed and established leaders in the industry, and really, I wouldn't have learned throughout the years without those three specifically. I've learned different things from over the years, and you as well,
Right.
and a whole ton of other people in the community. This has been awesome, and it's all thanks to the mentors and leaders that I've got to work with over the years.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again,
Thank you,
Kyle.
Denise.
Appreciate it. If you've learned even a kernel of an idea or was inspired by this episode, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast on Apple Podcast, and follow the My Curious Colleague page on LinkedIn. And be sure to share out the hashtag CPGCX, because CPGCX really and truly rocks. Ciao.
You have been listening to the My Curious Colleague podcast with Denise Vanieri. Thank you for your time.